Code Blue, Trauma Bay 3. Move, move, move. Kemi Adebayo's scrub stuck to her skin with exhaustion, and something darker. The metallic tang of blood that had become her constant companion through 36 hours of hell. Her hands trembled as she pushed the crash cart down Chicago Memorial's fluorescent-lit corridor, the wheels squeaking a rhythm that matched her racing heartbeat. Dr. Adebayo, we need you in trauma too, called Nurse Martinez, her voice cutting through the chaos. I'm not a doctor yet, Kemi muttered, but her legs carried her forward anyway. 6 months from graduation, and she still felt like an imposter in these halls where life and death decisions happened in heartbeats. The trauma bay doors burst open as paramedics wheeled in their latest casualty, a man in an expensive suit with a hole where his chest should be whole. Blood pooled beneath the gurney, dripping onto the pristine hospital floor in steady drops that would haunt Kemi's dreams. What happened? Dr. Chin barked, his gloved hands already working. Drive-by shooting downtown, the lead paramedic reported. Multiple witnesses said it was execution style. Professional hit. Kemi's phone buzzed in her pocket as she assisted with a trauma assessment. The man's eyes were open, staring at nothing, but something about his face made her stomach clench. She'd seen that face before, on the news, in whispered conversations about Chicago's underground. Time of death, 2:47 a.m., Dr. Chin announced. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of machines monitoring other patients. Kemi stepped back, her phone still buzzing insistently. She pulled it out, thumb swiping to silence the notifications, when the trauma bay doors exploded open again. Nobody moved. 3 men in dark coats filled the doorway, their presence sucking the oxygen from the room. The lead figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like winter storms, scanned the scene with predatory precision. His gaze locked on the dead man, then swept across the medical staff until it landed on Kemi. You, he said, pointing directly at her. You were here when Vitali came in. I don't know what you're talking about, Kemi whispered, but her voice cracked on the lie. The man stepped closer, and she could smell expensive cologne mixed with something dangerous, gunpowder, maybe, or the scent of violence itself. Marco Vitali, the dead man on that table. You treated him. We couldn't save him, Dr. Chin interjected, stepping protectively in front of Kemi. Whoever you are, you need to leave. This is a hospital. This is a crime scene, the man corrected, never taking his eyes off Kemi. And she's a witness. Kemi's phone slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering onto the blood-stained floor. The screen lit up with dozens of notifications, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Her heart stopped as she saw the preview of a video she didn't remember taking. The phone must have been recording when she dropped it during the chaos, capturing everything from her pocket angle. The video showed Vitali's final moments, the blood, her horrified face in the reflection of a medical cabinet. Someone had already shared it with the caption, ER murder witness. Chicago med student sees everything. Face screaming in fear skull hashtag Chicago Mafia hashtag ERT hashtag witnessed. Shit, she breathed. The lead man's expression darkened as he noticed her phone screen. In one fluid motion, he bent down and scooped up the device, his eyes scanning the viral video that already had thousands of views. Nico Moretti, he said, more to himself than anyone else. This complicates things. Kemi's blood turned to ice. Moretti. Even a med student buried in textbooks knew that name. The family that controlled half of Chicago's underground, locked in a bloody war with the Vitales for territory and power. Please, she whispered. I didn't mean to record anything. I can delete it. Nico's laugh was sharp as broken glass. Delete it? Sweetheart, this has been shared 8,000 times in the past hour. The internet is forever. Dr. Chin moved closer to Kemi, his protective instincts overriding his fear. You can't just take her. This is a hospital. There are cameras, security. Are there? Nico asked, pulling out his phone and making a quick call. Santos, I need the feeds from Chicago Memorial wiped. Trauma Bay 2. Past 4 hours. Yes, all of them. He hung up and smiled at Dr. Chin, a smile that promised violence. Not anymore. Kemi's phone buzzed with a text from her uncle, Professor Adebayo. Delete everything.
Now.
Your life depends on it. Her hands shook as she opened the message, but there was more, an attachment. A photo of her uncle shaking hands with a man she now recognized from news reports. Vincent Vitali, the dead man's brother. Her uncle wore a pin on his lapel, small but unmistakable, the Vitali family crest. No, she breathed, the betrayal hitting her like a physical blow. Nico noticed her expression change. Family problems? My uncle. She started, then stopped. How could she explain that the man who raised her, who paid for her medical school, who taught her that education was the only way out of poverty, how could she explain that he was connected to this nightmare? Uncle got his hands dirty, did he? Nico stepped closer, and she could see flecks of gold in his storm-gray eyes. That's the thing about this life, princess. It touches everyone eventually. I'm not your princess, Kemi snapped, surprising herself with the venom in her voice. And I'm not part of whatever sick game you're playing. You became part of it the moment you witnessed Vitali's execution, Nico replied calmly. The moment your face ended up on social media as the ER witness. The Vitalis think you saw who pulled the trigger. They think you have information that could destroy them. But I don't. I was treating patients. I barely saw anything. Doesn't matter what you saw, Nico interrupted. Matters what they think you saw. And right now, they think you're a threat that needs eliminating. The weight of his words settled over her like a burial shroud. Her career, her family, her future, everything she'd worked for was crumbling around her because of a phone that fell at the wrong moment. What do you want? She asked quietly. I want to keep you alive, Nico said, and something in his voice made her believe him. Which means you're coming with me. Like hell I am. Look around, Dr. Adebayo. He gestured to the trauma bay, where Dr. Chun and the nurses stood frozen with fear. You think the Vitalis care about your Hippocratic oath? You think they'll respect the sanctity of a hospital when they come for you? As if summoned by his words, the lights in the trauma bay flickered. Through the windows, Kemi could see black SUVs pulling up to the emergency entrance, men in dark clothes stepping out with military precision. They're here, Nico muttered, his hand moving to his jacket. Time to go. I can't just leave. You can't stay, he cut her off. Not unless you want to end up like Vitali. I should have deleted that video the second it happened. But I didn't. And before I tell you how that one mistake put a target on my back, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna, because some secrets the Mafia will kill to keep buried. Dr. Chun grabbed Kemi's arm. Don't go with him. We can call the police, the FBI. The police? Nico's laugh was bitter. Half of them are on Vitali's payroll, and the other half are on mine. There's no cavalry coming, document. The trauma bay doors burst open again, but this time it was a medical staff. 3 men in expensive suits moved with lethal purpose, their eyes scanning the room until they locked on Kemi. There she is, the lead man said, his accent thick with Brooklyn menace. The little bird who saw too much. Nico moved faster than Kemi thought possible, putting himself between her and the Vitali soldiers. She's under Moretti protection now. Says who? Says me. Nico's voice carried absolute authority. And says the fact that you're standing in my territory without permission. The Vitali soldier smiled coldly. Your territory? This is neutral ground, Moretti. Hospital rules. Rules change, Nico replied, his hand now visibly resting on the grip of a concealed weapon. Especially when someone starts a war in my backyard. Kemi found herself caught between 2 forces of nature, each deadly in their own right. Her medical training screamed at her to de-escalate, to find a peaceful solution, but her instincts told her that peace wasn't an option in this world. Kemi, Dr. Chun whispered urgently. There's a service elevator behind the nurse's station. If you can get there. She's not going anywhere, the Vitali soldier interrupted. Vincent wants to have a conversation with the witness. Vincent can make an appointment, Nico shot back. Through proper channels. The tension in the room stretched tight as a piano wire. Kemi could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, could smell the antiseptic hospital air mixed with fierce sweat and barely contained violence. That's when the lights went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in hellish red. In the confusion, Nico grabbed Kemi's hand, his grip warm and surprisingly gentle despite the calluses she could feel on his palms. "Move," he whispered urgently.
"Now."
They ran through corridors that had become a maze of shadows and crimson light, past patients who watched with wide eyes as this deadly game of cat and mouse played out in their sanctuary. Behind them, she could hear shouts, the sound of doors being kicked in, the heavy footsteps of men who killed for a living. "Why are you helping me?" she gasped as they reached a stairwell. Nico paused for just a moment, his gray eyes meeting hers in the emergency lighting. "Because you don't deserve to die for someone else's war. But you're part of that war." "Yeah," he said quietly. "I am. But you're not. Not yet." The stairwell door above them crashed open, and the sound of boots on metal stairs echoed down toward them. Nico cursed under his breath and pulled her toward the parking garage exit. "Stay close," he commanded. "And, whatever happens, don't let go of my hand. Get in the car."
"Now."
Nico's black Escalade sat running in the hospital parking garage, exhaust forming ghostly clouds in the February cold. Kemi hesitated at the passenger door, her medical training warring with survival instinct. Getting in meant crossing a line she could never uncross. "They're 30 seconds behind us," Nico said, already sliding into the driver's seat. "Your choice, ride with me, or take your chances with Vincent's boys." The stairwell door exploded open behind them. Kemi dove into the passenger seat just as muzzle flashes lit up the concrete pillars. Nico gunned the engine, tires screaming against the polished floor as bullets spiderwebbed the rear window. "Jesus Christ." Kemi ducked below the dashboard, her hands shaking uncontrollably. "Welcome to my world, princess." Nico took a corner at 60, the SUV's weight shifting dangerously. "Buckle up. This is just the opening act." They burst out of the garage into Chicago's pre-dawn darkness. The city stretched before them like a circuit board, neon signs reflecting off snow-slicked streets. Kemi had lived here for 4 years, but riding shotgun in a mafia war made everything look foreign and threatening. "Where are you taking me?" "Somewhere safe." Nico's jaw was tight with concentration as he navigated through traffic, checking mirrors constantly. "Somewhere the Vitales can't reach you." "Safe." Kemi laughed bitterly. "I was safe in the hospital. I was safe at medical school. You destroyed all of that. I saved your life. You ruined my life." She slammed her palm against the dashboard. "I had 6 months left. 6 months until I became Dr. Kemi Adebayo. Until I could pay back my uncle, help my family in Lagos, build something real." Nico glanced at her, something unreadable flickering across his features. "Your uncle who's wearing Vitali pins in photos? That family?" The words hit like a slap. Kemi stared out at the passing streetlights, each one marking another mile away from the life she'd planned. "He raised me after my parents died, brought me to America, paid for everything. He's not perfect, but he's not a criminal?" Nico finished. "Sweetheart, nobody gets close to the Vitales without getting blood on their hands." They drove in silence through neighborhoods that grew progressively more isolated. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by rural darkness broken only by their headlights cutting through falling snow. Kemi's phone buzzed with notifications, friends asking if she was okay, professors wondering why she'd missed rounds, reporters already trying to track down the ER witness girl. "Turn it off," Nico ordered. "My phone. Unless you want them tracking us through cell towers." He pulled his own device apart with practiced efficiency, removing the battery. Technology is a double-edged sword in this business. Kemi powered down her phone, but not before seeing one last message from her uncle. "Kemi, where are you? The Vitales are asking questions. Come home immediately." The safe house materialized out of the wilderness like something from a fever dream, a modern cabin perched on a cliff overlooking Lake Michigan, all glass and steel and architectural impossibilities. Snow crunched under their tires as Nico parked in the circular driveway. "Home sweet home," he said, but his tone suggested anything but comfort. Inside, the cabin was spartanly furnished but expensive, leather furniture, a kitchen that belonged in a magazine, floor-to-ceiling windows that would have been beautiful if they didn't make Kemi feel exposed to unseen threats. "How long am I supposed to stay here?" she asked, dropping her purse on the granite countertop. "Until the heat dies down." Nico moved through the space with predatory efficiency, checking locks, testing security systems. Could be days. Could be weeks. Weeks. Kemi's voice rose to a near shriek. "I have patience depending on me. I have exams." "You have a target on your back," Nico interrupted, his gray eyes hard. "Everything else is secondary to staying alive," says the man who profits from death. Nico stopped moving, his stillness more menacing than any threat. "You think you know me? You think you understand what I do, what I've sacrificed to keep this family together? I know you're a killer." Yes. The admission was simple, unadorned by justification. "I've killed men who deserved it and some who didn't. I've made choices that haunt me every night. But I've never killed anyone who didn't choose this life. And now you're dragging me into it. I'm keeping you alive long enough to get out of it." Nico opened the refrigerator, revealing it stocked with enough food for a siege. "The Vitalis want revenge for Marco's death. They think you saw the shooter, think you can identify him. Until we prove otherwise, you're a loose end that needs tying up." Kemi sank into one of the leather chairs, the weight of her new reality settling on her shoulders. "Who did kill him? Does it matter? It matters to me. My life is destroyed because of something I didn't see, didn't do. I think I deserve to know why." Nico was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those storm-colored eyes. "My cousin Tony. Marco was moving product through our territory without permission. Disrespect has consequences in this business." "Your cousin killed a man over territory?" "My cousin killed a man over principle. You don't understand the rules we live by, the codes that keep this world from descending into complete chaos." Chaos. Kemi stood up, anger overriding fear. "You call this order? You call kidnapping innocent people and starting wars in hospitals order? I call it survival." Nico's voice was quiet but steel-edged. "The strong protect what's theirs. The weak get crushed. Is that what you think I am? Weak?" He looked her up and down appraisingly. "You're still breathing, aren't you?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Kemi found herself studying him in return. The expensive suit that couldn't hide the predator underneath, the hands that looked equally capable of violence and tenderness, the eyes that seemed to see too much. "I'm going to make dinner," Nico said finally, breaking the tension. "You should eat something." "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway. Stress burns calories, and you're going to need your strength." He moved around the kitchen with surprising competence, pulling ingredients from perfectly organized cabinets. Pasta, olive oil, garlic, herbs that looked fresh despite their isolated location. "You cook?" Kemi asked despite herself. "My sister taught me." There was something vulnerable in the admission. She said any man who couldn't feed himself was still a boy playing at being grown up. "Where is she now?" Nico's hands stilled over the cutting board. "Dead. 3 years ago. Caught in crossfire between us and the Russians." The pain in his voice was raw, unguarded. For a moment, the dangerous mafia prince disappeared, replaced by a grieving brother who carried too much guilt. "I'm sorry," Kemi said quietly. "She was innocent, like you." He resumed chopping with mechanical precision. "That's why I'm keeping you safe. Someone should get to stay innocent in this mess. I'm not that innocent. I've seen people die on my table, seen families destroyed by violence and addiction and poverty. I just never thought I'd be part of it." "You're not part of it," Nico said firmly. "You're a victim of it. There's a difference." While the pasta cooked, Kemi found herself drawn to the kitchen windows. The view was breathtaking. Lake Michigan stretched to the horizon, its surface broken by white caps that caught moonlight like scattered diamonds. Under different circumstances, this could have been romantic. It's beautiful here, she admitted. My sister designed it, Nico said, stirring sauce that smelled like heaven. She had plans to retire here someday, maybe raise kids who didn't have to know what their father did for a living. Did she know about your business? She knew enough. Knew to stay away from certain neighborhoods, certain people. Knew why we had bodyguards, and why I carried a gun. His voice grew bitter. Didn't know enough to stay away from a restaurant on the wrong night. Kemi turned from the window to find him plating pasta with the precision of a professional chef. The domestic scene felt surreal, a mafia killer preparing dinner while snow fell outside their glass sanctuary. This smells incredible, she said, accepting the plate he offered. Family recipe, passed down from my grandmother in Sicily. They ate in comfortable silence, the food warming Kemi from the inside out. She couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked for her. Medical school was a diet of energy bars and cafeteria coffee, survival rather than nourishment. It needs something, she said thoughtfully, tasting the sauce again. Excuse me? The sauce. It's good, but it needs. Kemi got up and explored the spice rack, pulling out containers until she found what she was looking for. Curry powder. Just a pinch. You want to put curry in my grandmother's marinara? Trust me. She sprinkled the golden powder into the remaining sauce and stirred it in. The aroma that rose from the pan was intoxicating, familiar Italian flavors with an unexpected warmth that spoke of Nigerian markets and her mother's kitchen. Nico tasted it, his eyebrows rising in surprise. That's actually incredible. Food is about fusion, about taking what works from different places and making something new. Kemi smiled, the first genuine expression she'd worn since this nightmare began. My mother taught me that before she died. How old were you? 12. Car accident in Lagos. My father died 6 months later. They said it was a heart attack, but I think it was a broken heart. She took another bite of the pasta, tasting home in every forkful. Uncle brought me to America after that. Said I could have a better life here, become someone important. You are important, Nico said quietly. I was going to be a doctor. I was going to save lives, not watch them end in hospital corridors. You still can be. Not after this. Not after being connected to all of this. She gestured around the safe house, at him, at the impossible situation they found themselves in. The heat will die down. Vincent will find other priorities. You'll go back to your life. Will I? Kemi met his eyes across the table. Will you just let me walk away when this is over? Nico was quiet for a long time, his fork pushing pasta around his plate. Yes, he said finally. When it's safe, I'll make sure you get back to your life. And what about your life? Do you get to walk away? This is my life. Has been since I was 15, and my father put a gun in my hands. There's no walking away from blood, princess. It follows you everywhere. That's a choice you're making. No, Nico said firmly. It's a choice that was made for me before I was old enough to understand what it meant. They finished dinner as the wind picked up outside, rattling the windows and sending snow swirling in hypnotic patterns. The storm was getting worse, the modern cabin feeling increasingly isolated from the civilized world. I should probably find somewhere to sleep, Kemi said, standing to clear her plate. Master bedroom is upstairs. I'll take the couch. I can't take your bed. You can and you will. Nico's tone brooked no argument. This place has security measures you can't see. Motion sensors, cameras, armed response systems. The bedroom is the safest place in the house. As if summoned by his words, a low electronic beep sounded from somewhere in the walls. Nico tensed immediately, his hand moving to his weapon. What was that? Perimeter alarm, he said quietly, moving to a hidden control panel. Something triggered the outer sensors. The Vitalis? Maybe. Or maybe just deer. But his expression suggested he didn't believe the benign explanation. The lights suddenly cut out, plunging them into darkness broken only by the glow of falling snow outside. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in eerie red light. Definitely not deer, Nico muttered, pulling his gun. Stay behind me and do exactly what I say. Kemi's heart hammered against her ribs as they moved through the red-lit cabin toward the windows facing the driveway. Nico kept low, professional and controlled even as danger closed around them. There, he whispered, pointing through the glass. Headlights were approaching through the storm. 2, maybe 3 vehicles moving slowly up the mountain road. They drove without running lights, visible only when their beams swept across snow-covered trees. How did they find us? Kemi breathed. Same way we found you. Technology cuts both ways. Nico was already moving, checking weapons, testing communication equipment. They'll be here in 10 minutes. Maybe less. What do we do? Nico looked at her, something shifting in his expression, calculation giving way to protectiveness, cold professionalism warming into something more personal. We fight, he said simply. And we survive. They're not stopping at the gate. Nico's voice cut through the howling wind as 3 black SUVs crashed through the electronic barriers, their headlights sweeping across the snow-covered driveway like searchlights hunting prey. Kemi pressed herself against the wall beside the window, her medical training useless against the adrenaline flooding her system. How many? She whispered. 12, maybe 15. Nico moved with lethal precision, pulling weapons from hidden compartments throughout the cabin. Vincent brought an army. The power grid flickered and died completely, leaving them in absolute darkness except for the approaching vehicle lights. Emergency systems failed to engage this time. Someone had cut the main lines. Professional job, Nico muttered, handing Kemi a flashlight. They've been planning this. What does that mean? It means your uncle gave them more than just your location. His jaw tightened with cold fury. He gave them the security codes. Outside, car doors slammed with military precision. Voices carried on the wind, orders given and clipped, professional tones that spoke of men comfortable with violence. Basement, Nico commanded, grabbing a duffel bag full of ammunition. There's a tunnel that leads to the boathouse. If things go bad, we go bad together, Kemi interrupted, surprising herself with her vehemence. I'm not running anymore. Nico studied her face in the flashlight's glow. This isn't your fight, princess. It became my fight when they made me a target. When my uncle... She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't voice the betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. The first window exploded inward, glass showering the living room as smoke canisters rolled across the hardwood floor. Within seconds, the cabin filled with choking gray clouds that burned Kemi's eyes and throat. Gas masks, Nico shouted, pressing a military-grade respirator into her hands. They want us alive, or they wouldn't be using non-lethal. Why alive? Because you're no good to them dead. They need to know what you saw, who you've told. Kemi strapped on the mask just as the front door disintegrated under explosive charges. Armed figures poured through the smoke like demons emerging from hell, their laser sights cutting red lines through the artificial fog. Nico opened fire from behind the kitchen island, his shots precise and controlled. 2 attackers dropped immediately, their bodies crumpling onto the imported Italian tile. Move, he yelled to Kemi. She crawled toward the staircase on hands and knees, broken glass cutting through her scrubs and into her palms. Behind her, gunfire erupted in controlled bursts, Nico giving ground slowly, making each step cost the attacker's blood. Halfway up the stairs, Kemi's foot punched through a rotted board, her ankle twisting with a nauseating pop. Pain shot up her leg like electricity, and she bit down on a scream. Kemi, Nico's voice carried over the chaos. My ankle, she gasped, trying to pull her foot free. It stuck. More smoke canisters rolled into the stairwell, the chemical fog growing thicker by the second. Through her mask, Kemi could see muzzle flashes like deadly fireworks, could hear Nico's ammunition running low. Strong hands grabbed her shoulders, lifting her bodily from the broken stair. Nico's face was streaked with smoke residue and something darker, blood from a cut above his left eye. Can you walk? I can try. He half-carried, half-dragged her up the remaining steps, his breathing labored from exertion and adrenaline. Behind them, the attackers advanced methodically, clearing each room with professional efficiency. Bathroom, Nico panted, kicking open a door. There's a hidden panel behind the mirror. But as they stumbled across the threshold, Kemi saw movement in her peripheral vision, a figure emerging from the shadows of the master bedroom, weapon trained on Nico's back. Behind you. Nico spun and fired in one fluid motion, but the attacker's shot had already been triggered. The bullet caught Nico in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into the bathroom vanity. Nico. Kemi dropped beside him, her medical training overriding terror. Blood soaked through his shirt, dark and arterial. How bad? Bad enough. His face was pale but determined. Get to the panel. Behind the mirror. I'm not leaving you. You're not staying to die with me. Kemi pressed her hands against his wound, trying to stem the bleeding. Shut up and let me work. The bathroom door exploded inward before she could do more than basic first aid. 3 men in tactical gear filled the doorway, their weapons trained on both of them. Kemi Adebayo, the lead man said, his voice muffled by his gas mask. Vincent Vitali wants a word. Vincent can go to hell, she replied, not moving from Nico's side. That's not an option. They were dragged from the bathroom and down the smoke-filled stairs, Kemi supporting Nico's weight as best she could with her injured ankle. The cabin's main floor looked like a war zone, furniture destroyed, walls pocked with bullet holes, expensive art reduced to shattered frames and torn canvas. Vincent Vitali waited in the living room like a king holding court in ruins. He was smaller than Kemi had expected, distinguished-looking in an expensive overcoat that hadn't been touched by the violence surrounding him. His eyes held the flat, reptilian coldness of a man who viewed human life as a commodity. Dr. Adebayo, he said pleasantly. Or should I say almost Dr. Adebayo. I understand you have 6 months left in your program. Had, Kemi corrected bitterly. Pessimism doesn't suit you. Vincent smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. Your future depends entirely on your cooperation. I told you already, I didn't see anything at the hospital. I was treating patients, not watching executions. But you recorded something. Vincent pulled out Kemi's phone, which she'd last seen falling to the trauma bay floor. This little device captured quite a lot before you dropped it. He swiped through the video, showing her angles she hadn't known existed. The phone had bounced and spun as it fell, recording fragments from multiple perspectives, including a clear shot of the hospital parking garage where a motorcycle had been parked. You see this bike? Vincent pointed to the screen. Custom paint job. Very distinctive. Only 3 like it in all of Chicago. Kemi's stomach dropped as she realized where this was leading. One belongs to a collector, who never rides. One belongs to a dead man. And one belongs to Tony Moretti. Vincent's smile grew predatory. Your footage places Tony at the scene of my brother's murder. That's not evidence. Vincent interrupted. In court, maybe not. But in my world, it's a death sentence. Tony's been walking around free because nobody could prove he pulled the trigger. Until now. Nico shifted beside her, trying to speak through pain-gritted teeth. Leave her out of this. Your fight is with my family. My fight is with anyone who helps my family's killers. Vincent's attention turned to Nico, cold and calculating, including wounded puppies who think they can play protector. She's innocent. Nobody's innocent, Mr. Moretti. Not in our world. Vincent gestured to one of his men, who stepped forward with a tablet computer. Especially not when their family has been feeding information to my organization for 2 years. The tablet screen showed surveillance photos, her uncle meeting with Vincent, with other Vitali lieutenants, money changing hands in parking garages and restaurant back rooms. The betrayal was complete and documented in high-definition clarity. Professor Adebayo has been quite helpful, Vincent continued conversationally. Medical school schedules, hospital rotations, security protocols. He even provided your class schedule, so we could track your movements. You're lying, Kemi whispered, but the evidence stared back at her from the screen. Your uncle owes my organization $300,000 in gambling debts. His cooperation was the only thing keeping him alive. Vincent's tone remained pleasant, as if discussing the weather. Of course, he never expected you to witness Marco's execution. That complicated things. Kemi felt the last pieces of her world crumble. The man who raised her, who preached about integrity and education and building something honest, he'd sold her life to pay for his weaknesses. "What do you want?" she asked hollowly. "I want you to testify that Tony Moretti killed my brother. I want detailed testimony about what you saw, when you saw it, how certain you are of the identification." "But I didn't see." "You saw what I need you to have seen," Vincent interrupted. "Memory is surprisingly flexible when properly motivated." "And if I refuse?" Vincent nodded to his men, who grabbed Nico and hauled him upright despite his wound. Blood had soaked through the makeshift bandage Kemi had applied, his face gray with blood loss and pain. "Then Mr. Moretti dies, slowly while you watch. Then your uncle dies. Then your medical school classmates start having unfortunate accidents." Vincent's voice never changed tone. "I'm a patient man, Dr. Adebayo, but I'm not a forgiving one." Nico met her eyes, something urgent in his expression. "Don't do it, Kemi. Whatever he's threatening, don't." One of Vincent's men struck him across the face with a pistol grip, opening a cut along his cheekbone. Nico's knees buckled, but he stayed conscious through sheer will. "Stop." Kemi lunged forward, but strong hands held her back. "You're going to kill him. That's entirely up to you," Vincent replied calmly. The blizzard outside had reached whiteout conditions, wind howling around the cabin like voices of the dead. Snow piled against the broken windows, the cold seeping in to mix with the smoke and blood and desperation. Kemi looked at Nico, really looked at him for the first time since this nightmare began. Beneath the expensive suits and casual violence, she saw something that surprised her. Vulnerability. Fear not for himself, but for her safety. The same protective instinct she'd seen in trauma bays when family members fought to shield their loved ones from pain. "I need guarantees," she said quietly. "You're not in a position to negotiate," Vincent replied. "I'm in the only position that matters. I'm the witness you need." Kemi straightened despite her injured ankle, finding strength in the ruins of her old life. "You kill him, you get nothing from me. You hurt my friends, you get nothing. You want my testimony, you guarantee their safety." Vincent studied her with new interest, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "You're not what I expected, Dr. Adebayo. I'm exactly what you made me." For a long moment, the only sound was wind and Nico's labored breathing. Then Vincent smiled, a genuine expression that was somehow more terrifying than his previous false pleasantries. "Very well. Conditional guarantees, pending your full cooperation." "Meaning?" "Meaning you testify exactly as I've instructed. You identify Tony Moretti as Marco's killer. You provide whatever additional details I require to make the story believable." Vincent's eyes glittered with cold satisfaction. "Do this, and Mr. Moretti lives. Your friends remain safe. You even get to finish medical school, though perhaps not at your current institution. And if I refuse? Then everyone you care about dies, starting with the man bleeding on my floor." Kemi closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices crushing down on her shoulders. Testify falsely and destroy an innocent man to save the people she loved. Refuse and watch them die to preserve her integrity. When she opened her eyes, Nico was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Pain, yes, but something else. Understanding, maybe. Or forgiveness for whatever choice she was about to make. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Time is a luxury you don't have," Vincent replied. "The storm is getting worse, and my patience grows thin. Decide now, Dr. Adebayo. Live as a hero or die as a martyr, but decide." Outside, a wolf's howl cut through the blizzard, long, mournful, and utterly alone. "I'll testify." The words escaped Kemi's lips like a death sentence, each syllable cutting deeper than the glass embedded in her palms. Vincent Vitali's smile spread across his face with reptilian satisfaction, while Nico's eyes filled with something that looked like betrayal. "Excellent choice, Dr. Adebayo." Vincent gestured to his men. "Prepare the recording equipment. I want her testimony documented before we leave. Wait. Kemi held up a bloodied hand. I said I'll testify. I didn't say I'd lie for you. The temperature in the destroyed cabin seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Vincent's pleasant mask slipped, revealing the predator beneath. Excuse me? You want my testimony? Here it is. Kemi's voice grew stronger with each word, the terror transforming into something harder and more dangerous. I witnessed Marco Vitali's death. I also witnessed your men terrorize a hospital, threaten innocent medical staff, and attempt to murder the man who saved my life. Vincent's hand moved toward his coat. That's not the testimony we discussed, but it's the truth. Kemi pulled her phone from her pocket, not the device Vincent's men had confiscated, but a second phone she'd hidden in her scrubs. And it's all been recording for the past 20 minutes. The silence that followed was broken only by the storm outside and Nico's ragged breathing. Vincent stared at the phone in Kemi's hands, his face cycling through disbelief, rage, and calculation. You think you're clever? He finally said. I think I'm desperate. And desperate people do dangerous things. One of Vincent's lieutenants stepped forward, weapon raised. Boss, just give the word.
No.
Vincent held up a restraining hand, his eyes never leaving Kemi's face. I want to hear what she thinks she's accomplished. I've accomplished exactly what you taught me. Kemi's smile was sharp as surgical steel. I've created evidence. Proof of your crimes, your threats, your admission that my uncle was feeding you information. All time-stamped, all admissible in court. Assuming you live to present it. I don't have to. Kemi held up the phone, showing them the screen. Live streamed to 3 different platforms. Everything you've said, everything you've done, it's already out there. Thousands of people have watched you threaten to murder a wounded man. Vincent's composure finally cracked. You stupid little. His words were cut off by the sharp crack of splintering wood. The bathroom door where Kemi and Nico had taken refuge earlier exploded outward, and Tony Moretti emerged with an assault rifle, flanked by 6 men in tactical gear. Nobody move. Tony's voice cut through the cabin like a blade. FBI. Everyone on the ground now. The world erupted into chaos. Vincent's men spun toward this new threat, weapons tracking toward Tony and his team. But they hesitated, confused by the FBI identification, uncertain whether this was another player in the Mafia game or legitimate law enforcement. That hesitation cost them everything. Tony's team moved with military precision, their weapons firing non-lethal rounds that dropped Vincent's soldiers one by one. Smoke filled the cabin again, but this time it was cover for the good guys. Kemi, get down. Nico shouted, throwing himself over her despite his wound. She felt his weight press her into the floor, his blood soaking through her scrubs as bullets whined overhead. Around them, the battle was brief but intense, professional operators against hired thugs, training versus desperation. When the smoke cleared, Vincent Vitali knelt in zip-tie restraints while his surviving men groaned from taser wounds and rubber bullet impacts. Vincent Vitali, Tony announced, pulling out an FBI badge. You're under arrest for racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 50 other federal crimes. Kemi stared at the badge in shock. You're FBI? Deep cover for 3 years, Tony confirmed, helping Nico to his feet. Your testimony just gave us everything we needed to bring down the entire Vitali organization. But you killed Marco. Marco was my CI. We staged his death to protect him and flush out Vincent's remaining network. Tony's expression grew grim. Unfortunately, your phone footage complicated things. We had to accelerate the timeline. Nico swayed against Kemi, his blood loss finally catching up with him. You knew, he said quietly. When you decided to testify, you knew Tony was undercover. I suspected. Kemi helped support his weight. The motorcycle in my footage, it was parked too perfectly, positioned exactly where any camera would catch it. Like someone wanted it to be seen. Smart girl, Tony said approvingly. We've been feeding Vincent information through your uncle for months, building a case. We just needed him to incriminate himself on record. My uncle is in witness protection, Tony interrupted. Has been since we flipped him 6 months ago. The gambling debts were real, but we offered him a way out that didn't involve selling his niece to the mob. Relief flooded through Kemi so powerfully her knees nearly buckled. He's safe. He's terrified and guilty as hell, but safe. Tony was already coordinating with his team, securing the scene. We'll need your full statement, but the live stream recording should be enough to put Vincent away for life. What about me? Vincent spoke for the first time since his arrest, his voice stripped of its earlier confidence. I want a deal. I can give you names, operations, money trails. You can give that to your lawyer, Tony replied coldly. Right after we add kidnapping and assault to your charges. EMTs arrived as if summoned by magic, their efficient movements transforming the destroyed cabin into a triage center. Kemi found herself on the receiving end of medical attention for the first time in years, her cuts cleaned and bandaged while paramedics worked on Nico's more serious wound. Through and through, the lead paramedic reported. Missed the major arteries. He'll need surgery, but he should make a full recovery. Good, Kemi said, surprising herself with the relief in her voice. As they loaded Nico onto a stretcher, he grabbed her hand with his uninjured arm. You saved my life, he said quietly. You saved mine first. We're even then. Are we? Kemi studied his face, seeing past the blood and pain to something deeper. What happens now? You go back to your world. I go back to mine? Nico was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes searching her face. What if I told you I was done with that world? That 3 years of watching Tony pretend to be something he wasn't made me realize I could pretend to be something better. I'd say that sounds like the pain medication talking. I'd say you're probably right. His smile was weak but genuine. But I'd also say that some things are worth changing for. The paramedics started moving the stretcher toward the door, but Nico held onto Kemi's hand. Visit me in the hospital? I'll be there when you wake up from surgery. Promise. I promise. As they loaded him into the ambulance, Tony appeared beside Kemi. You did good tonight. Kept your head, made the right choices under impossible pressure. I made the only choices I could live with. That's what courage is, Tony said. Not the absence of fear, making the right choice despite being terrified. The ambulance pulled away into the storm, its lights disappearing into the swirling snow. Around them, FBI agents processed the scene with methodical thoroughness, turning Vincent's failed power play into evidence for federal prosecutors. What happens to me now?
Kemi asked.
You go back to medical school. Finish your degree. Save lives. Tony's expression was serious. The Bureau will provide protection until Vincent's trial, but with his organization dismantled, the threat should be minimal. And Nico? That depends on him. We've been trying to flip him for 2 years, but he's loyal to his family. Tonight might have changed that. Kemi looked out at the lake, where dawn was beginning to break through the storm clouds. The water looked different in daylight, less mysterious, more peaceful. Like hope beginning to emerge from darkness. Can I ask you something? She said. Shoot. The whole time you were undercover, did you ever forget who you really were? Tony considered the question carefully. Sometimes. The deeper you go into a role, the harder it becomes to remember where the performance ends and you begin. Why? Because I think I forgot who I was for a while tonight. Forgot that I'm someone who fights for people, not someone who runs away when things get difficult. You didn't run. No, Kemi agreed. I didn't. 6 months later, Kemi walked across the stage at Northwestern University's medical school graduation, her uncle beaming from the audience despite the federal marshals flanking him. Her diploma felt heavier than expected, not just paper and ink, but the weight of everything she'd sacrificed to earn it. Vincent Vitali had been sentenced to life without parole 3 weeks earlier. The trial had been a media sensation, with Kemi's testimony and live stream recording serving as the prosecution's star evidence. She'd testified with steady voice and clear conscience, telling the truth exactly as she'd experienced it. Nico had been in the courtroom every day, wearing a suit that couldn't quite hide the shoulder scar from his bullet wound. They'd spent hours together during his recovery, talking about everything except what might happen between them once the trials ended and life returned to normal. Dr. Adebayo. She turned to find him waiting outside the graduation venue, holding a bouquet of flowers that looked expensive and slightly wilted. Behind him, Tony stood with several other men in federal badges, not as guards, but as friends. "You came," she said. "Wouldn't miss it." Nico held out the flowers. "These are from my sister's garden." "Well, what's left of it after the FBI finished processing the crime scene?" Kemi accepted the bouquet, inhaling the scent of roses that had somehow survived Chicago's brutal winter. "They're beautiful. So are you." The compliment hung between them, weighted with months of shared trauma and slowly building trust. Around them, other graduates celebrated with their families, but Kemi felt isolated in this moment, caught between her old life and something entirely new. "I have something to tell you," Nico said quietly. "Good news or bad news? That depends on how you feel about dating a former mob prince turned federal witness." Kemi's heart skipped. "You testified?" "Gave them everything. Names, operations, money trails, bodies buried in concrete foundations." His smile was rueful. "Turns out I remembered a lot more about the family business than I wanted to admit. And now I'm in the same witness protection program as your uncle. New identity, new location, new life." Nico stepped closer. "The question is whether that new life includes a certain doctor who makes incredible fusion pasta sauce." "I don't know," Kemi said thoughtfully. "That depends on whether this former mob prince can handle being with someone who puts curry powder in marinara. I think I can adapt, even if I want to move to a small town and open a clinic that treats people who can't afford fancy hospitals. Especially then." Kemi rose on her tiptoes and kissed him, tasting hope and possibility on his lips. Around them, camera flashes went off as other graduates captured their own moments of triumph, but she barely noticed. "You saved my soul," Nico whispered against her mouth. "We saved each other," she corrected. As they walked away together into the crowd of celebrating families, Kemi's phone buzzed with notifications. Someone had recorded their kiss and posted it online with the caption, "Redemption Kiss. The ER witness and her mafia prince." Smiling face with heart eyes, 2 hearts, #Chicago love, #witness protection, #healing hearts. For once, going viral felt like victory.